Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to welcome best-selling author Velma Knowles. Welcome, Velma.
Thank you, Lance. It's great to be here.
It's our pleasure. So, Velma, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got so passionate about leadership and kind of the things you've been involved with.
Sure. So a little bit about me. I was born in the islands of the Bahamas, permanent tan. So that doesn't mean I'm out on the beach. But I was born in the islands of the Bahamas, and it was there that I had the opportunity to work after high school with a nonprofit organization that really sparked a desire in me about birds and photography and conservation and environmental protection. And it was there that I had the opportunity to learn from a professional fundraiser on how you could raise money to support causes, donor support. And I was blessed to be able to take that knowledge several years later and create a professional fundraising campaign for my own education, which brought me here to the United States. So I was born in the islands, and when I was born, it was under the British ruling. So I like to say I was born a Brit, and then we became independent. So by law, I became a Bahamian, and by choice, in 2006, I became a United States citizen. So that's what brought me here. My love of leadership really sparked from the fact that I think when you become aware that there's more potential inside of you and that you are not living up to that potential, it can fuel a flame for you to just go after that. And I would not have coined myself as a great leader when I had the opportunity to be responsible for the outcome of others. And so I just made it a lifelong journey of becoming a better leader myself and taking all the lessons and training and certifications I have and sharing them now with others to help them lead better too.
No, that's wonderful. So I wanted to also touch, if it's okay, we talk about this. You have a personal story about a loved one who you helped care for and manage their care who had dementia.
Yeah. So you when you say I'm happy to share my heart today for being on this is not something I talk about necessarily in my business on leadership, although I have done that on some keynote speeches. But my whole goal of coming on today was for all of you that are listening or watching in on the show with Lance, and in the hopes that if you know of, or if you are working with a family of someone that is struggling with dementia, that it can somehow help to give you maybe a different point of view or perspective. So my story, I kind of smile when you said, a personal story about how you cared for, because I guess I wouldn't say I cared for my mom, even though maybe when I tell the story, you'll say, yes, you did. But yeah, I just feel like that's such a big word for me to have to say. However, my mom, back in 2018, she lived in the Bahamas all her life. So I'm here in the US. So if you have a family member and you've got that distance, then I feel your pain. And she developed dementia. She was the only one of her siblings that had the disease, but her father did. So if that speaks to any type of gene or hereditary, I don't know, but she was in her late 60s, early 70s when it started to be noticeable. But my mother, I need to tell you a little bit about her to put it in context. It's a very independent woman, very strong, and that stemmed from the fact that she had to step up in life and really take care of her family at a time of great loss. One of the things that you might not know is that my mother lost her firstborn child, her son, my brother, at the age of 7. So when he was 7, he passed away from leukemia. And that was a huge journey that she went through, a year and a half of trying to find a way to help him have a way to be cured through that disease. And it wasn't possible back then. And then about, I think there was probably about 4 to 5 years later, she lost my dad to cancer. So to put it in perspective, it was my sister, myself, and my mom, and I'm the baby, if that helps up with this situation. So I was the little tough one I think she had to deal with. When she developed dementia, she, like, I guess with everyone that goes through something like this, Lance, they tend to find ways to cope. So she did a lot of scratch notepads and, knew what was happening. She was living by herself because my sister and I had both moved away from off the main island that she lives on. And she was coping really well. She was taking care of herself. We had support family nearby. But then in the early, I guess it was about 5 years ago, she got very sick, and she was hiding that, and we were talking with her, and we could tell something was wrong. So we both, my sister and I, took flights and got back as soon as we could. But in the meantime, we did have family members go there, and they were able to take mom to the emergency to find out she was totally dehydrated, probably over-medicated or under-medicated, because we weren't sure if she had taken the meds or not. But that was very frightening. And we realized it was at a point in time that she could no longer be by herself. Again, did I tell you my mom was independent? I think everyone is, right? I think we all are. So when she did come out of the hospital, she was very reluctant to have anyone move into the home with her. And in the islands of the Bahamas, for those that are listening, we don't have the opportunity to have, as back then, assisted living facilities. We have a few now, but we didn't have those types of care places where you could put a loved one to get the round-the-clock support they need. And so you would do everything you could to get someone to move into their home with them. And I think that's even, I don't know which is worse, having someone move into the home or moving the loved one into another home. The doctors advised us that it was best for her, if we could, to get someone in as soon as possible, because with dementia, it's a matter of time. And I'm not medically skilled to respond to this, but I know enough to be dangerous. And it's where the brain begins to die. And as the brain begins to die, it shrinks and shrinks. And not only do you lose memory, but you also lose the ability to do a lot of other things. My mom's dementia was not that severe when we first brought someone into the home. And so it took a little while. I guess I was the caretaker then, because as the baby, I made the decision, and I said, well, we're going to make this decision. And she was pretty mad at me, but that was okay. I still loved her, because you do those things out of love when you make those kinds of tough calls. So we had a caregiver come in, a loving Christian woman that moved in with her. We had enough space and made sure she got 3 meals a day, cleaned the house, made sure she took her medication. And eventually they became good buddies. Yeah, they became like great friends. They would go to church together. They had outings, and things were going really well until last year. And last year, to bring you full circle, my mom was celebrating her 80th birthday. And so my sister and I were there in July. It's actually, and so she was celebrating her 80th birthday. And it was at that time that she had these gifts. And she would bring these gifts. She had gifts for her birthday, and they were in a bag. And I would say, Mom, so today's your birthday? And she said, it is? And I'm like, yeah, it is, and I think you learn to live in their world. That's one of the things that I took away during my whole mom's journey, is I had to learn to live where she was. Right. And so she was like, it is. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, that's great, and she had a great attitude. We were just very blessed as a family. My mother never got agitated, never became irate. And I know all of those things have high probabilities So I consider myself very blessed not to have to deal with that. But we were at this moment, and I said, yeah, there's a box of presents there. And so she took the bag and she said, this for me? And I'm like, yes. And Lance, she started going through and she was taking them out. Oh, I love this. And it was all these sweet stuff like bubble baths. And my mom was huge on perfume and just all this kind of good stuff. So she was like, oh, and she was like, who gave me this? And I was like, well, your sister did. And she said, she did? And I'm like, yes. And so she's like, wow, she must know I love all this stuff. I said, yes. And I said, you have to put it back in the bag now. So she put it back in the bag. I said, so we'll take it away later. And she sat it next to her chair. And then it wasn't a minute later. And I turned to my sister because we were there. And I said, I'm going to try something. And she said, what? And I said, I'm going to ask her if she knows today's her birthday. So I said, Mom, today's your birthday. And we went through the same thing. It is? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, and you got some gifts. And she said, I do. And she took the bag. And Lance, she went through and she took all those things out again. And she asked me the same thing, who gave it to her. And I went through the same routine. And I said, your sister? And she said, she must really know how much I love these things and what I like. And I said, yeah, she does. And I said, but you got to put them all back. And we did. And what that taught me is that with people that have dementia or Alzheimer's or that are losing their memory, whatever you're losing, it taught me that it was not so much about the memories. It was about the moments with my mom. Right. And that was a moment. And every time I think about her birthday, I think about how many times I did that with her. Now, some people might say, you went and did that several times with her? Because my sister did. She's like, what are you doing? Why are you asking her the same thing? I said, because it's all new to her. She's having a happy moment right now over and over and over again. And she's celebrating that. And so at that point in July, she knew who my sister was and who I was. She didn't know all the family members, but she knew her kids, and she knew a few things I did wrong when I was little too. But we both flew back home after that, my sister and I, and Mom, that was the time. And I think she knew, because she held on to me. She would always hold on to me when I'm leaving, especially since I went off to college back in the day. But she held on to me so tight. And I remember that moment. And it was at a place where it was like you kind of had this different feeling. So, I guess my message to those that are listening is hold on to your moments. That was special. To bring it full circle, my mom passed away November 26th of last year. And I went home in October because she was not doing well. And her caretaker said, she's not remembering where she is. She's wanting somebody to take her home. And when I got home in October is when I realized my mother didn't know me. And that was the first time in my life. And this is the really first time I'm talking about it. I mean, you and I have had a little chat, but from that perspective. So it was the first time that I realized that she didn't know who I was and that our relationship didn't exist anymore, not the way I knew it. So it was an opportunity for me to build a new relationship. So that was something I learned, is that my mom taught me that you when life changes, you have to change and you have to adapt to that change. And so we had the doctors come and they said, there's nothing else you can do for your mom. Your mom's in the best of care. She's not in any pain. That was a concern of ours. We wanted to make sure she wasn't in any pain, and that you just make her as comfortable as you can. So I came back after that visit to go back to work. And in November, we were going home for Thanksgiving, my sister and I, to spend time with her. Mom's caretaker was going to take a break because they need to do that. Trust me. And we were there, and she went pretty fast down and failing in her health. She went from not being able to remember to go to the bathroom, not being able to eat, not being able to even get out of bed. We had hospital beds bought in. So we didn't know how long, but we knew her time was coming to an end here on this earth. So I tell you that because the Tuesday she passed away on that Saturday. And that Tuesday, my mom was joking and laughing with my sister and I. I mean, I was like, Mom, you make me so laugh. I'm going to have to go to the bathroom. She just had such, and she didn't know who we were. And she thought we were her. She thought I was her mom. Must be this beautiful gray hair I got going on. Or she thought my sister was her sister. So she was, having fun with us. And we were laughing. And I was like, man, this must be a high or something. I don't know. And that night she went to sleep. And she didn't wake up. Her eyes, she just laid there sleeping, and she didn't open her eyes anymore. And so we had the doctors again, and they said she's not in any pain. I think you want to do something. You want to do something, but there's really nothing you can do. You just have to be there and support them. And you have to remember that it's a disease. It's not the person. Whatever happens there. So on that Saturday morning, as I went in to check on my mom, I noticed she wasn't breathing like she was before, and I didn't hear any breathing. And I put my hand on her chest. My sister was there. My sister turned on the light, and we both looked at each other. And I said, "Mom's gone." And so, when you say you cared for her, I guess in a way. But I feel like for what I know people do and what they go through in having to care for their loved ones and live with their loved ones or caring for them, or, I consider myself very blessed to have such a supportive family network that was there. My mom's sister was constantly there. My cousins were there, taking her to the food store when she couldn't and visiting with her when she couldn't get out. Her church was huge supportive, so if nothing else, you'll learn that you'll learn reliance. Right. You need to rely on other people because it's not something you can walk alone.
That's for sure. And, you may not view it as, caring for her, but I view it as you were caring for her, Velma, because there's more ways to care for somebody than to be there hands-on. You're helping to, meet with the doctors, her caretakers, coordinating the family to help. So, you were caring, but from maybe a different perspective than being there in person, right? Yeah. And we tell that to families all the time because, if I could write a script for a perfect scenario for a family to come together, I think you just shared it with us, because we encounter so many families where the siblings live out of the state, one sibling lives locally. The sibling that's local is saying to the siblings out of state, you don't know what I'm dealing with. Mom's doing this or dad's, and they just see it superficially because they're not there on the ground. And that's hard, and, you were so fortunate to have such a loving communal, relationship and support system that your mom undoubtedly was definitely cared for by all of you.
Yes. And, my sister took major responsibility in managing all the bills and paying everything and the financing. When my mom couldn't do that anymore, my sister stepped in and took on that responsibility, which was huge. And it's a good thing because she's better with numbers than I am. I can't add myself out of a paper bag. But you find the strengths that each family member has. And so as small as I feel the family network was in my case for my mom, it might be small, but it was mighty. And her church family added to that extended family. Yeah.
Real quick before we move on, I want to ask, in hindsight, Velma, if you had to go through this again today, is there anything you would do differently than how things worked out or how you did things originally with Mom?
Yeah, that was a tough question there, Lance. What would you do differently?
And maybe there's nothing.
Yeah, I think about that. I don't know if there would be something I do different. Maybe I would. Maybe I would have learned earlier on how to be more supportive for her, because you as an individual, you're going through this whole transition yourself.
Right.
And so it's not something that's just happening to them, it's happening to you. And I wish I would have learned a lot more about the disease and how to cope through that and how to care through that than when I did. I did my crash course, but it was at a place in time where I knew, okay, I've got to know all these things. And if I would have done it sooner, I think it would have gave me a lot more patience, and a lot more wisdom to know what to do.
Yeah, because I think it's fair to say nobody and none of us ever grow up or plan to be a caregiver or a caretaker for a spouse, a child, or for a parent who has a disease or an illness. And they don't prepare you for it like they do to be a parent. You know, there's books on being a parent, there's classes, there's doctors. But when it comes to caregiving for a family member, it's nothing, and it can come all of a sudden out of nowhere. So it does catch you a little flat-footed and ill-equipped. So you are kind of learning on the fly. And I think that's one of the biggest deficits that, you know, families have to face is all of a sudden they're thrown into this and they're very ill-equipped, and there's not a lot of places to turn for that support or resources. You know, let's say your mom didn't have a church family. You take them out of the equation. Let's say it was just you and your sister and your mom and her sister and your cousins were living somewhere else. It changes the whole dynamic.
Absolutely. And also being able to find someone that you can put to move in and to do the daily care, and that person is going to treat your loved one like you want them to be treated. And so I just think all around, as I look back, you can't plan for something like that. You're exactly right. But the more you know, I think the better you can make decisions and the better you respond in life to the things that do come your way. I think the biggest challenge for me personally, and maybe for some listeners here that are dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's or memory care, loved ones that are struggling with that, is that we're fixers. In life, we want to fix things. We want to solve the problem, and we want to try to find a solution or a cure or work whatever we can. We want that for our loved ones. And when you are at a place where you're dealing with something like memory care loss and through dementia, Alzheimer's, you have to come to this level of acceptance that that's not something that you can fix. You know, you can prolong, you can do things to try to ensure the best comfort, but it's not like as they fight, and they are fighting to try to find cures today for that horrifying and scary process that people go through. It's not like you could say, okay, well, we're going to get you on this track, and it's going to, potentially you got a 50% chance or 20% chance, but there was really no chance of change. Absolutely. It was. Yeah. And I think that was the hardest thing, Lance, probably for anyone that has to face that, the loss of someone, like, what they call the long goodbye, which I don't know. I don't think it's a long goodbye. I think it was pretty quick on my part because she knew me and then she was gone. But I think that's the biggest difference I see is you can't fix it. And
can't fix it. And you touched on something earlier, Velma. I just want to go back to where you said, be in their moment, because that's one of the things I think families oftentimes have the most struggle with is, mom or dad or whoever the loved one may be, they want to convince you that the sky is purple and we all know it's blue. Don't argue with them. Let it be purple for them, because you're not going to change their mind, and that's where you just have to be in the moment with them. Don't ask them to be in the moment with you. Right.
And that was one of the things my mom, I learned from her through this, is that I needed to connect with her in a different way. Right. And the connection kept changing, because eventually I sat the night before she passed away, and while she wasn't awake, you could tell the expression on her face that she was struggling. And so I would talk to her, but I would talk to her as if I was her mom. Yeah. And I would say, don't worry, Margaret, you're a good girl. Mama's very proud of you. And you could see the body expression change with a sense of peace. And my sister, and I was just me in there with my mom, and I was just talking, and I was like, well, and we need to go to the food store. And I was just making up stories. My sister came and she said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just talking to her. I'm having a conversation. And it seems to give her a sense of calmness and peace. Even though she wasn't awake, she could hear me. And it was a different connection. And it's tough. I'm not saying this without in any sense of how simplistic or easy it is, because it's not to call your mother by her name and to be someone else just for her. But you learn that you have to find the way to connect with them. And when you love someone, it doesn't matter how that connection happens, as long as you're still connected.
So that kind of segues into this next part I wanted to speak to you about. And
Sure.
we're going to have links to your website and to all of your books up on the website and on the screen here as well. But you're a certified leadership coach, as well as a human behavior communication expert.
Yeah.
Did you use any of those skills when caring for your mom?
Well, it's interesting. I don't think I did it by design. I think I did it by default. Yeah. Because it's a natural part of it. So it wasn't like I was like, okay, if I pick up this particular proven model of human behavior, I can work this here. But when we talk about communication, and this works whether someone's struggling with memory care or not, the way that you connect with someone is in their style of communication. And so the model of human behavior, DISC, helped me, because I knew that the way that I would want someone to speak to me was not going to work. I needed to make sure I spoke to her in a way that she would hear me, not just listen, but she would actually hear what I had to say, and she would be open to it, especially when I had to bring the decision that we were going to have someone move into the house. That skill set came in handy. Because I was able to apply some of those tips and techniques to be able to have a conversation in a way that didn't create massive conflict, even though she was pushing back, but was a way to just make a stronger message of connecting with her, where eventually she was acceptant of it. And you have to give people time.
Sure. So for viewers or listeners who may have some family conflict and dynamics,
sure,
how could the one who might be listening or watching this right now say, well, wow, you had it great. Velma's situation, I wish I had that situation where I had all this support, there's harmony, there's peace. And I'm sure there might have been, times where it wasn't always perfect, but more so than not. But theirs is more conflict than not. And they want to communicate to their siblings, or they're the leader and everything's falling on them. How can they use some of these skill sets of leadership in the human behavior communication to try to communicate with their family, to minimize conflict and to be heard, but also to take over that leadership role and fulfill it?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would say is to ask questions. And not just any kind of questions, but ask questions that help to understand, and that you want to hear what another family member has to say, what their thoughts are, what they believe should be the next step. Even even the doctors ask questions there, but with your family, it was more asking the right questions or asking more questions so that you get perspective on where everybody is coming from, because you have to go where people are first before you can take them where you want them to go. And so for anyone that's listening, try to go where someone is. Say, help me understand. I am trying to understand. Help me understand. What would you think we should do next? Why do you think this is happening? Ask questions and say, because I want to make sure that together we're making the right decision. And even though you might carry the full leadership role, leadership is about influence. And in order to influence someone, to have them come alongside you, that's what you want. You want people to come alongside of you, whether, not just in business, we're talking about in a family. And to get the family to come alongside, you've got to ask for their thoughts and their opinions, and you've got to listen to them, and you got to probe deep on it. And you've got to then share why you feel a certain way and why you think this would be the best recourse, and ask them in a way where you invite them to say, if you want to make the decision, I will support you. So be willing to pass the lead over and let someone else lead if they feel like they want it. I think most of the time you'll find that they won't accept it, especially if you've already by default had to step in to lead, because it's a tremendous responsibility, the life of someone and the care for someone. And so, but giving them that option, I think might surprise you, because sometimes we just think, well, I got to make the decision. We got to get this done. I don't have any time for all of what's going on. That's just noise. In the Bahamas, we say that's Bahama drama. You just don't want to hear about it. But in reality, you can't do this by yourself. And so you've got to do that pregnant pause. You got to just hold for a moment and say, I've got to hear what they have to say. I need to get them to go with me. In order to get them to go with me, I got to go where they are. And then extend to them the opportunity, invite them and say, well, Lance, if it would work better for you to take on that role, I will support you. Because you will find that that most of the time they will say, no, you got it. You got it. I just wanted you to know why I felt this way. And you say, I hear you. And we're going to do the best. And it's not, I'm going to do this, or it's, we are going to do this. So take the I out of it and let them know that even though you might be making the decision or have the plan or have, or going to take certain action, that you're doing it together. But that has to come after the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you're talking, I can see a future book in your future, because I think there's so many families, Velma, that struggle just with that communication. And sadly, because we see countless families with our company, and the closest of families, as soon as it comes time to have to make decisions for their parents, they become so fractured and splintered, and it's all over communication. It's all over that communication.
You're so right. And I would be remiss, and my sister would agree if she was here, that her and I have had our battles. And, even prior to this, with my mom's health, my mom was never really sick. So you guys got to understand, I think when she got sick in 2000, before dementia set in and everything, she had severe pneumonia and had to be rushed into the hospital. My sister and I at that time were just like two knuckleheads. I mean, we just kept hitting each other and, just kind of quabbling over and arguing over what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And so I did write a book. I'm not promoting books here, but I wrote it more for me, because I was like, you need to learn to be a better communicator. And in 2019, I wrote The Valuable Communicator, and it's 7 keys. And in that, I talk about the model of human behavior. But for business and for personal life, communication is really what life is about. So as much as you can, learn about your style of communication so that you could recognize the style of others and be able to connect better.
That's wonderful. Now,
Sure.
That also applies, because I know when we spoke previously, and you can correct me if I get this wrong, you gave a keynote speech to Assisted Living Association of Florida?
Yes. Yeah, the Florida Assisted Living Association. Yes, sir.
Now, we have a lot of professionals that watch and listen to the show as well, Velma, and, dealing with our professional jobs, we deal with these issues a lot. Speak to the importance of leadership in the healthcare setting for those who are managers, case managers over, more subordinate positions, and why that is so key. Because, we deal with the support roles, right? The CNAs, home health aides, medical assistants, and then we have, the management. And we're preaching the value of those positions to those staff because they're the ones on the front lines. They're the ones with the
Yep.
boots on the ground, as they say. And we have an open door policy. Communication is always going both ways, but we're always praising them to let them know the importance of those roles. Because a lot of times they feel like, they don't have maybe necessarily the higher education, like an RN behind their name or, something of a higher level degree. And so they don't get that feeling of self-worth sometimes,
Yes.
And I think that's more so in a hospital setting than anything else. Why is it important to have good leadership in the healthcare setting?
Well, I did have the opportunity to keynote for the Assisted Living Association. I think there were about 700-800 people in the audience. And my topic was on uncover the valuable leader in you. And every time I give a speech, I always customize the topic and the stories for the audience, because content without context is just noise.
Right.
And you have to put things in context for people. And so uncovering the valuable leader for the assisted living professionals and support staff, to me, the biggest message was all about how they have so much value and they really don't understand and they don't see what their impact is, not just for the day-to-day duties that they have to do, whether they're in maintenance or, in cooking, or they have the therapy, or they're just changing the linen on the bed. Whatever they're doing, their role is impacting someone's life and someone's care. And my message to them was all about the fact that I couldn't be here today speaking to you if you were not doing what you do, because I'm that person you're serving. You may think it's the patient. You may think that it is the family member that comes to visit. You may think it's the vendor. You may think it's the person that you report to in that organization. But in reality, you're serving so many people. And it was my opportunity to tell them that you don't know my mom, but you've met her every day because you care for people that are in need like she is. And I just wanted to tell you how much I love you. I didn't realize what an impact that made, because I really, that today, when I gave the speech, I didn't realize that the people in the audience did not understand their self-worth. I thought I was just reassuring to them and encouraging them and thanking them. And I had people come up afterwards in tears saying, you have no idea how much you impacted me by just telling me that you love me. You love the fact that I have a heart for what I am doing. I'm not doing it for all the money I'm making, check. I'm not doing it because every day is a lot of fun. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get from day to day. So if you are a leader in the organization of these people that are leading the care, because that's what they're doing, they're leading the care of the patients and the families of those patients on a day-to-day basis, and those residents that you have there in your care. And if you're that leader that is responsible for those people, you get to set the tone of how they care. Culture starts with the leader. You walk that talk that you want others to walk. And so I would encourage those that are in leadership positions, and leadership, I think everyone is in a leadership role, let me qualify, but those that would probably carry a title of leadership or a position that is designated in that leadership role, I would encourage you to realize the responsibility that you have for the people that are caring for your residents and your patients and their family members. And the more you can love and care for those people, and I know people may say, you don't love I'm talking about love in the sense of, there's 5 languages of appreciation at work. And so when I teach on that topic as well, I talk about the fact that you're really loving that person because you're demonstrating how much you appreciate them, how much you value them. And
it doesn't cost anything to do that either.
It doesn't. It costs your time.
Right.
You got to have that, be willing. And it's not even a cost in time. It's an investment of time. But I always, my message when I left the care assisted living facility participants and leaders, my message to them, for them to take away, is that there's 3 things in life that everyone wants. Everyone wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be heard. And everyone wants to be valued. And you can do that for everyone. So that's what I would tell anyone listening, regardless of where we are. If you are the child of a parent or spouse of a loved one, or a family member that's listening, or someone in the medical field that's supporting them, or someone in one of the memory care units or assisted living, extended care facilities, I would tell you that you have the power to, regardless of your position, regardless of your title, you have the power to help people be seen, heard, and valued.
That's wonderful. Well, Velma, I just want to say thank you personally for, because I know how extremely busy you are, and it's just been a real pleasure to have you as our guest and to share your story with your mom. And I'm sure she was just a beyond wonderful woman, and you're a great friend of ours. And hopefully we'll meet up again soon one day when your next book comes out. I'm looking forward to that. No pressure. And we'll have all the links up in our show notes and on the website for you. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, Lance, thank you too. And I want to really thank you and your lovely wife for the invite. When you reached out to me about this, and for all those that are listening and watching, I wasn't quite sure what value I would bring, but it is my hope that there was at least one thing you could take away that would help you on your journey to helping those you love.
Yes, I think there were several. And I think a lot of these principles, though we specialize in, long-term care issues, we also are people, and we deal with people daily, as all of our viewers and listeners do. And I think these are rules and concepts that can be applied in everyday life, no matter what you're working or dealing with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Velma.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lance.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms, or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to Velma Knowles for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.